People called it the crime of the century. It was this meticulously planned heist where a gang of thieves just walked away with a fortune and they never even fired a shot. But you know, the thing about near-perfect crimes is that one tiny little mistake can bring the whole thing crashing down. And that's exactly what this story is about. This is the story of the Great Train Robbery.
So picture this. It's the middle of the night, dead quiet. A massive Royal Mail train is just slicing through the English countryside, making its way from Glasgow to London. But then, the driver, a guy named Jack Mills, he sees something weird. A red signal? Way out here. That light should be green. So he hits the brakes, bringing this huge train to a stop in the darkness, and he has absolutely no idea that he's just driven straight into a trap.
So what was so special about this particular train? Well, inside one of its carriages was a haul that today would be worth over £67 million. I mean, this wasn't just a mail train. It was basically a bank vault on wheels. The big question is, how in the world did a gang of robbers know it was going to be there?
Well, the answer is, this was no random smash and grab. This was a setup from the very beginning, and it was all built on some priceless insider information.
You see, at the very heart of this whole thing was a ghost, a mole, buried deep inside the Royal Mail security team. And seriously, to this day, nobody knows his name. But this anonymous source, he gave the robbers 2 tips that turned a wild fantasy into a very real and very profitable operation.
So this mole, he delivered 2 golden nuggets of information. First, he told them that the carriage with all the cash, the high-value packages coach, was an older model. And you know what that means. No security alarm. A huge vulnerability. But the second tip? Well, that was the jackpot. He told them exactly when to strike.
And just look at this. You can really see what a massive opportunity this was. On a normal night, that train was carrying a good amount of money, sure. But on this night, because of a recent bank holiday, it was carrying 10 times the usual amount. It was the perfect storm, a once-in-a-lifetime score, and the gang knew it was coming.
Okay, so the stage is set. The gang has their intel, they know the prize is on its way, and now they're just lying in wait, by the tracks on that fateful night.
And when they moved, man, they were fast. We're talking ruthless efficiency here. The whole thing started by them just covering the green signal light with a glove and hooking up the red one to a battery. Super simple. When the co-driver gets out to use the emergency phone, he finds the line's dead, and bam, he's ambushed. In the cabin, Jack Mills puts up a fight and gets hit on the head with an iron bar. Then, the gang uncouples the engine and the money coach from the rest of the train, completely isolating their prize.
But then, they hit a snag. A pretty big one, actually. The gang had brought their own retired train driver, but he couldn't make heads or tails of the modern engine's controls. So, in this moment of pure improvisation, they had to go get the injured Jack Mills, haul him back into the cabin, and force him to drive the stolen section of his own train about a kilometer down the track.
So once they get to this spot called Bridego Bridge, it's just a whirlwind. The gang storms the cash coach, ties up the 5 staff members inside, and they form this human chain. In just a quarter of an hour, they moved 120 mail bags packed with cash. That's 2.5 tons of cash from the train down to their truck waiting below. They were in such a hurry, they even had to leave 8 bags behind.
And just like that, they'd done it. They pulled it off. They vanished back into the night, millions of pounds richer, leaving behind a totally baffled train crew and a crime scene with pretty much no clues. But right as they were leaving, one of them said something, a single casual sentence that would bring everything crashing down.
So they took off to their hideout, a place called Leatherslade Farm, which was about 43 kilometers away. They rented it months ago. And there, they split up the money, they celebrated, they listened to the police reports on a radio, thinking they were completely home free.
And here it is. This is the sentence that doomed them. As the gang was leaving the train, one of them turns to the captured mail staff and says, "Don't move for 30 minutes. I mean, it was meant to sound tough, right? Give them a clean getaway. But what it actually was the single biggest clue they could have possibly left for the police.
So you're probably wondering, why is that such a big deal? Well, the police immediately did the math. A 30-minute head start means the robber's hideout has to be somewhere within a 50-kilometer radius of that bridge. All of a sudden, the huge English countryside became a much smaller haystack to search.
And that single clue, which they heard on their own radio, it started a chain reaction of panic that would lead the police right to their front door. So you can imagine, when they hear about this search radius crackling over their radio, the party is over.
The original plan was to lay low for a few days, but now they just panicked and decided to scatter. In their rush, they paid some guy to burn the whole farmhouse down and destroy the evidence. But guess what? The guy just took the money and ran, leaving the entire hideout perfectly intact.
So a neighbor calls in a tip about some weird activity, and the police raid the farm, and what they find, it's a gold mine. You've got the empty mailbags, the getaway truck, all their leftover food. But the real clincher, the piece of evidence that broke the whole case wide open, was a Monopoly set. You see, while they were celebrating, they'd been playing the game, using the real stolen cash, and they left their fingerprints all over the board.
Now here's the kicker. These guys weren't first-timers. They all had criminal records. And that meant those fingerprints were all the police needed to connect the dots, unravel the entire operation, and bring about the final, dramatic aftermath of this legendary crime.
So let's look at the final scorecard here. Thanks to those fingerprints, arrests started happening within days. In the end, 14 of the 16 gang members were caught and hit with 30-year prison sentences. The replacement driver they brought along, and most tantalizingly, the inside man, they were never identified. But the story doesn't quite end there.
And, you know, for all the talk about how this was a nonviolent heist, we can't forget there was a very real human cost. The driver, Jack Mills, the man who was attacked in his cab, he never truly recovered physically or mentally. He couldn't go back to the job he loved, and he passed away just 7 years later. So in the end, yeah, most of the cash vanished forever, and most of the gang did hard time. But the central mystery, the ghost who started this whole thing with just 2 perfect tips, remains completely unsolved. The one question that still hangs over this whole story, even after 60 years, is who was the inside